make sure to give my dad a 5-star review.
Make sure to like and subscribe to his YouTube. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
The United States was coming up. So one beast goes down, one beast comes up at the same time. So the timing also, and the genius of its two horns like a lamb, separating government from religion, the genius of the second beast is a reaction against the first beast. The papal power, by its very nature, under the authority of popes, is that the Pope believes that he has the right to enforce religion through the state upon the people of Europe.
Well, hi, guys. This is Josh Burtram, your faithful host on the Faithful Politics podcast. It's great to have you here for another episode. We appreciate our viewers and our listeners. If you're joining us on the podcast feed, if you're joining us on our YouTube channel, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, because we love getting you awesome content that's in-depth, thought-provoking, and that's what we're all about here. And again, I'm always joined, as always, by my political host, Will. It's good to see you, Will.
Hey, God give you eyes to see and are using them. So good to be seen.
Come on, somebody. That'll preach. And today we have Steve Wohlberg. He is the speaker and director of White Horse Media. It's based in the rugged mountains of Priest River, Idaho. He's a Bible expert, international speaker, and television producer, and author of 40 plus. That's right. You heard me say that. 40 plus books on many biblical topics. He's been a guest on over 500 radio and TV shows and podcasts. He's also spoken by special invitation inside the Pentagon and the U.S. Senate. He's widely regarded as an apocalyptic expert. He's been featured in 3 History Channel documentaries: Secrets of the Seven Seals, Strange Rituals, Apocalypse, and Armageddon Battle Plan, and 1 National Geographic International documentary, Animal Armageddon. And he offers insights into the book of Revelation in each of those. Some of his many books include The United States and Biblical Prophecy, Approaching Armageddon, End Time Delusions, End Times Health War, and Will My Pet Go to Heaven? For animal lovers. I love it. And we're gonna have to talk about that one, Steve, because I need to have answers for my children that ask me about their hamster and Coco that they lost. But Mr. Wohlberg is happily married to his wife Kristen, devoted father to 2 children, Seth Michael and Abigail Rose, and he loves the great outdoors, swimming, jogging, and spending time with his family. And we are so happy that we get some of your time today on Faithful Politics Podcast. Thanks for coming on the show with us, Steve.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Josh and Will. It's great to be with you. And I'll make a confession that every time I hear somebody read my bio, I think to myself, my bio is much bigger than I am. You know, those that know me, I'm pretty down to earth. As far as the pet topic, I was just last Friday, I was on for about an hour with the Jesus Calling podcast talking about this topic.
Nice.
So I've been interviewed on many different topics, and I'm blessed to be here, blessed to have a chance to share with you guys and with your viewers and listeners. It's my privilege, that's for sure.
Well, thank you so much. I can't wait to dig into this conversation. And so let's just start with, I think that's interesting. We're going to get into biblical prophecy, and we're going to talk about that because there's so many fascinating things about this that we want to dig into in our short time together. But talk to me a little bit about the animal in heaven thing. What should I tell my daughter who asks if Coco, her dearly beloved and late hamster, about whether Coco is in heaven or not?
Yeah, people ask me that a lot, actually, since I wrote this book. Here's a picture of me holding the book.
I love it.
Yeah, Will My Pet Go to Heaven? And the background of this book is that when my wife and I first married, we were living in Texas. This was in the year 2000. We didn't have any kids at that point because we were newlyweds, but we got a little dog named Jax. He was a toy rat terrier, and he became like our kid. And so the book tells the whole story of Jax and how he unexpectedly ran out in the street in front of our house, bit the wheel of a car that was going by in a quiet neighborhood, rammed his head into the ground. He was in sort of a coma for 3 days. Finally, we took him back from the vet to our house, prayed an earnest prayer that he would survive. He died. I went on the computer and emailed some friends of mine, said, you don't need to pray for Jax anymore. He just died. And one person wrote me back and said, well, I hope that you'll see him in the kingdom of God. And that was kind of a new thought for me at the moment. And at that moment also, I sensed the presence of the Holy Spirit with me in front of my computer. And I remember thinking to myself, Lord, are you saying something to me? Is this possible? So that's what resulted in a lot of research. And then I finally wrote the book. And when people ask me the point blank question, will my pet be in heaven? I tell them that my book builds a good case for hope. I don't, give a definitive answer, yes or no, because I want to be biblical, but there are verses that I have found in the Bible that give me hope, that especially in the new earth, when God remakes the heaven and the earth, and the wolf dwells with the lamb, and the leopard lies down with the goat, and God makes animals that, because he's a loving God for his children who are there, who have been very connected to certain animals, I believe it's very possible that the good Lord will bring back for God's people some of their favorite animals. And I have Bible verses that give me hope for this. And so anyway, if people, really want to dive into this topic, they can get the book. And actually, as we'll mention later, we're offering some of these books for free to some of your listeners and viewers. We have a book giveaway fund that people have donated to for this purpose. So anyway, we could certainly spend an hour just on that topic.
I'm sure we can. That's awesome. That gave me a really good answer for my daughter. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
sure.
but like, I hate to be that guy, but like, and I'm now encouraged to actually read that book. But does the Bible basically imply that if you had a wolf or a leopard as a pet, like those would be the ones that would be? I mean, because if you're making an argument that I need to own a wolf and a leopard, like you don't have to try that hard, really, to be honest.
Yeah, no, and the Bible doesn't go into those kind of details. But like I said, there are verses. There's at the end of Psalm 104, and then in Romans 8, there are verses that I read in my journey to find out answers to this question that spoke to my heart and gave me hope that it's possible that I would see Jax again in the new earth. So
that's awesome.
But like I said, we could spend an hour on this topic, and maybe we can book another one where we'll go into that more in detail.
I would love that. Sure.
Yeah, that would be fascinating.
So, Steve, I mean, like when I look at your collection of books that you've written, and you've written a lot, as we said in the intro, they all kind of have like a theme, prophetic, mark of the beast, like end times, stuff like that. And I'd really love to know, like, what was the catalyst, if anything, that kind of started you to kind of go down this road to study, research, and then write about these collection of topics?
Sure, yeah. And I'll just clarify something when Josh mentioned author of 40-plus books. Some of these books are full-size books, but a lot of them are little books, like pocket books like this one, The United States in Bible Prophecy. So they're not all as big as this one, End Time Delusions. But anyway, the catalyst was I grew up in a very secular, cultural Jewish home in Southern California. There was no Bible, no prayer, no synagogue, no church. We were just, we were a Jewish family that celebrated Passover every once in a while with neighbors. But there was really no religion there. There was no faith there. So when I got in, and this was in the Hollywood Hills area, that's where I grew up. And when I got into my teen years, I got pulled into the wild world of North Hollywood High School and the San Fernando Valley and Sunset Boulevard and Beverly Hills and just the whole scene, in the 1970s that just pulled me into alcohol and drugs and a wild life. And I was on a bad path. And when I turned 20 years old, long story short, I met Christians in strange places and started reading the Bible. I was searching for something, started reading the Bible, and then it was really the Garden of Gethsemane, reading about Jesus suffering in the Garden of Gethsemane, that really reached my heart. And the Lord just got a hold of me, and as a 20-year-old, I got on my knees for the first time, and I asked Jesus to come into my heart, to forgive my sins, and to get me out of the pit that I was in. And He really began to change my life. And so, through reading the Bible, I discovered that Jesus was my Messiah. He was my Savior. He suffered in Gethsemane. He died on the cross. He rose from the dead, and He went to heaven. And that was like a whole new awakening to me. And then the more I read the Bible, I discovered that He's coming back again. He's coming back again, and the book of Revelation is the book that deals with details about what's going to happen. And so I thought, wow, if Jesus came once and He's coming back again, and maybe we're in the last days before His coming, I want to find out about this. So that was the catalyst, Will, for me to really start studying prophecy. And it just gripped me, and I think the Lord called me to do this. And so it's been a long journey for the last 45 years. I'm 65 now, and the journey has brought me into writing and media and seminars and production, and little by little, it's been quite ups and downs, but God has blessed me. And so most of the books that I have written, like you mentioned, all the lineup of books, most of them deal with prophecy topics. Now, I do branch out often, sometimes, like Will My Pet Go to Heaven? I have a book on depression called Help for the Hopeless. I have some books dealing with Harry Potter and Wicca and witchcraft and that whole trend, and the Twilight series and the vampires, and whether this is really what kids should be reading. But most is really dealing with prophecy. And just to let you know, I try very hard to, no matter what I'm talking about, whether it's the pet book or Harry Potter or prophecy or anything, I try to make Jesus the center of all of my books, because I'm so convicted that He's the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father but by Him, and He's the center. So He's the center of my life. And that's what I try to teach. And, I was just reading this morning about, there's a verse in Romans that says, the Holy Spirit helps us in our weakness. And that's what I rely on, because, the Lord knows I'm no Superman. I'm just a normal person like everybody else who needs a lot of help. And I think I credit what God has done in my life and through White Horse Media and through these books to the fact that I feel a deep need for Him to help me every day. And before I got on with you guys, I took a walk just 20 minutes ago in my backyard. We've got 5 acres up in the forest of Idaho, so I took a walk and I just prayed, Lord, help me as I go on the Faithful Politics podcast, and give me the right words to say.
I love that. That is so cool to hear that. And I feel a bit of a kindred spirit, or connection, maybe is a better word, with you. Just anyone who has felt a call that God put on their life, they've taken the steps that they felt like were necessary, they prayed about it, and they've taken a risk to try to make an impact. And my hats go off to you. My hat goes off and to you and to anyone who does that. I feel that in my own life. My wife and I started a church in 2020, right before the pandemic started, and it was a house church. It's grown now. We're meeting in a building on Saturday nights, but it's been a struggle. But that sense of the call, the sense of, hey, there's something that God's asked me to do, and I'm going to keep going until I can't do it anymore, or He makes something happen. And I just so appreciate that. And I would love to dig in to the idea of America in biblical prophecy. I grew up in a Pentecostal denomination, the Assemblies of God. I would hear things like this, that America is part of the end times. I would hear certain interpretations of Revelation along those lines. And then I got into college, and some of that was challenged. And then I got into more college, and it was challenged again. And I would just love to have you kind of work through, when you're arguing that United States is prophetically depicted as a major player in end times. Talk to us about that. Where do you kind of come to those conclusions? How did you come to those conclusions? And kind of make the case for that for us and our listeners.
Yeah, perfect. And, as you just described your journey going through college, and prior to that, you said that you had heard growing up in your church that America does have a role. My experience, and I'm pretty much aware, I think, of prophecy currents, prophecy views, that from what I've observed, most end-time Bible prophecy teachers don't think America has a specific role in prophecy at all. They'll focus mostly on Israel or Russia or Iran, the Middle East. But when it comes to the United States, they generally steer away from that, which maybe was more what you heard in college, challenging that view. And so there's one verse. If you have a Bible, if you want to, check it out with me, maybe your Bible's on your phone, or if you have a physical Bible. But there's one verse that I have studied for years. And I was actually invited in 2007, unexpectedly, by a chaplain of the Pentagon to come to the Pentagon.
That's awesome.
And to give a talk on prophecy, which blew my mind, blew me away when I got this declassified email. It said declassified from the Pentagon. So I read it, and it was an invitation from Chaplain Broom to come and give a talk on Bible prophecy. And I prayed. At first, I accepted the invitation. And then I prayed, Lord, what do you want me to talk about? And he said, you can talk about anything as long as it's prophecy related, because he decided to do a symposium. He invited Joel Rosenberg. He invited different prophecy speakers to give different perspectives, and I was included. So I decided to pick the United States in prophecy. And the verse that I read, which I'll read with you, is Revelation chapter 13, verse 11. This is the single text where my little book, The United States in Bible Prophecy, is all based on this text. And this also ties in with your previous interview that I mentioned that I heard with Paul Miller, where he was talking about church and state, and it was so insightful, that interview. So here's the text, Revelation 13, verse 11. John wrote, I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. Now, this verse is loaded. I mean, it's just loaded with information. And it amazes me. Some people think the book of Revelation is just John's creative writing. I don't buy that at all. I believe this is a completely inspired book. And John didn't just make this up. He said, I saw another beast. So he saw this in a vision that Jesus gave him when he was on the island of Patmos. And so the first question is, what is a beast? I saw another beast. And when you read Revelation 13, verse by verse by verse, that chapter perfectly parallels Daniel chapter 7. They go right together. Both chapters talk about a lion, a bear, a leopard, a dragon, beasts, 10 horns, a mouth, war on the saints. You go right down those chapters, and they talk about the same things, very similar. They go together, they fit. And in Daniel 7, we have Daniel had a dream when he was in Babylon, and he dreamed of 4 beasts. He dreamed of a lion, a bear, a leopard, and a dragon-like beast. And then as he's thinking about this in his dream, an angel comes into the dream and explains to him what these beasts symbolize. And in Daniel 7, verse 23, that's a pillar verse for me. Daniel 7:23, the angel said, "The fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth." So a beast represents a nation. Third beast will be the third kingdom, second beast, second kingdom, first beast, first kingdom. And the context of that dream was that Daniel was living in Babylon. And most scholars who study Daniel 7, most Bible commentaries like Matthew Henry and Adam Clark and Jemison, Fawcett, and Brown, and the list goes on of commentaries within the Christian community from the past, 99% of them recognize that the four beasts of Daniel 7 represent the lion was Babylon, the bear was Medo-Persia that conquered Babylon, the leopard was Greece that conquered Persia, and then the fourth beast, the strongest of them all, was Rome, the mighty Roman Empire during whose rule Jesus was born. Jesus was crucified by Roman soldiers. So this is pretty much standard teaching: Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. So we know a beast is a nation. So then when we go to Revelation 13, and John says, "I beheld another beast," logic tells us when chapter 13 and Daniel 7 go right together, and Daniel 7 defines a beast as a kingdom, that in Revelation 13, what's happening here is John is beholding the rise of another mighty nation. That's what's happening. And then the next question is, well, it says he's coming up. Well, during what time period is he coming up? And when you keep reading Revelation 13, we have the final events. So this is obviously a nation that's coming up down near the end times. And let me just quickly go through this with you. He's coming up. Now, the Greek word for coming up literally means growing gradually like a plant in a garden. So this nation is coming up gradually like a plant in the garden, and it says he's coming up out of the earth. The beasts in Daniel 7 all came out of the sea. The lion, the bear, the leopard, and there's another beast in chapter 13. There's actually two beasts. There's the first beast in Revelation 13 is about a 7-headed, 10-horned beast. He's like a lion, bear, leopard. The dragon gives him his power. He's got 10 horns, and he comes out of the sea. So the Daniel 7 beasts come out of the sea. The first beast in Revelation 13 comes out of the sea, but this second beast comes out of the earth. Sea versus earth. And in Revelation 17, verse 15, another angel said that the water represents people, multitudes, nations, and tongues. So a beast in prophecy represents a nation, and water in prophecy represents a lot of people. So here we have another nation coming up down near the end times, gradually like a plant in a garden out of the earth, which would be an area upon this planet that's rather sparsely populated, that doesn't have a lot of people. And then it says he has two horns, which would indicate a separation of power within the government of this nation. And it also, and something very interesting, when I give my seminars, I tell people there's two ways to study Revelation. One way is like a water skier where you skim the surface. The other way is like a deep sea diver where you go deep. And when you look at this text like a deep sea diver, you discover that the two horns are missing something. And what they're missing is crowns. So when you look at the first beast in verse 1, in Revelation 13:1, John says, "I stood upon the sand of the sea," he comes out of the sea, "I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy." So this first beast has 10 horns, and he has crowns on his horns, which would crowns indicate kingly power. Like in the past, kings would wear crowns. So the second beast in chapter 13, verse 11, has 2 horns that have no crowns, which would indicate a government that is not ruled by a king. It's not a monarchy. It's more of the people, by the people, for the people type of a structure. It's a different structure. And then it says that those 2 horns are like a lamb. And I was amazed when Paul Miller, your previous guest, talked about Jesus and about Caesar, and about Caesar's role in society or government, which is separate from the role of the church. And you probably know this scene in the life of Christ where in Matthew 22, he was challenged by a group of people that were trying to nail him. And they said, should we pay taxes to Caesar or not? And Jesus got out of that trap with a simple answer where he said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's and give to God what is God's. So the coins, he said, find a coin and hold it up, and the coin had the image of Caesar on it. And he said, it's Caesar's coin, his image is on it, so give to Caesar what is Caesar's and give to God what is God's. And that principle right there, which is a principle of the Lamb, it separates the sphere of Caesar and the sphere of the things of God. And here's an amazing thing. That principle of Jesus is the very principle that historically finally worked its way into the Constitution of the United States, where the Constitution, the First Amendment, says that Congress, representing government, shall not make a law to establish religion or to prohibit the free exercise thereof. So there's the separation of government and the things of religion. Each has its legitimate sphere. Now, that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be Christians in government, that politicians shouldn't be praying people, but it just means that there's a sphere where legislation has no place crossing the line and enforcing spiritual matters. And that principle is so powerful. And so when it says here in the text that he had two crownless horns like a lamb, which points to Jesus, I believe the principle of Jesus separated the things of Caesar and the things of God. That principle is right here in this text, separated the things of government and the things of religion. And then it says, and he spoke as a dragon, which would be the final end game when the principles of freedom disappear in this country and the dragon's voice is heard. Another point about the Lamb is that this nation has Christian features, Christian elements within it. And another point about the Lamb is the Lamb is a word that specifically applies to sacrifice, that lambs were sacrificed, Jesus was sacrificed, and this tells us that there are some noble sacrificial principles. And you look at our history, you look at the vets, many times I'll ask my audience, any vets here? And they'll raise their hands and I'll say, thank you for your service for our country. And we know that our government has a lot of problems. We know that there's, there's a lot of checkered history. But the reality is that in the midst of all of this, there have been noble people that have sacrificed their lives for the principles of freedom. And I see all of this built into the text. So beast is a nation. He comes up near the end of time out of a sparsely populated area. He has two horns, separation, without crowns, that point back to Jesus. And then it says he will eventually speak like a dragon. So I'm a strong believer that I can support my conviction, and that when you really look closely at this Bible verse, there is no other nation upon the earth that fits every single prophetic detail of this prophecy, which was revealed to John in a vision nearly 2,000 years ago.
That's really fascinating, Steve. I really appreciate you.
Yes, thank you for taking us through that.
Yeah. It was really, really informative. I guess so. Call me a skeptic. I mean, I've been called worse, but at least for the purposes of this conversation, how do we know it's not like Russia or Mexico or something like that? Help me kind of, maybe narrowed it down a little bit more. I think you alluded to some of it, regarding the Constitution, First Amendment, stuff like that. But help me, cross out that, John isn't talking about, a huge nation like Russia or even Mexico that has a majority, Catholic population.
Yeah, great question. And there's more to this prophecy than I shared. I can maybe add a few more details. It's significant that in verse 11, this beast is coming up at the same time that verse 10 describes the first beast going down. So verse 10 says, he who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. As I mentioned, there's two beasts in this chapter. The first beast comes up out of the sea, and he has many characteristics, just like I went through the characteristics of verse 11. So this other beast, if you look at verse 2, Revelation 13:2, John says, the beast which I saw, he was like a leopard, which takes us back to Daniel 7, because the third beast was a leopard representing Greece. And his feet were the feet of a bear, and the bear takes us back to Daniel 7. That was the second beast representing Medo-Persia. And he had a mouth like a lion, and that takes us back to the first beast of Daniel 7. There's a lion representing Babylon, a bear, a leopard. And then it says, and the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. The dragon ultimately is the devil, but in the context of Daniel 7, it's the fourth beast, which is the Roman Empire. And Satan used the Roman Empire to try to kill Jesus when he was a baby in Bethlehem. Herod sent his soldiers to kill all the children under 2 years old. And Satan used Rome to ultimately crucify Christ. It was Roman soldiers that nailed his hands and feet to a cross. And Satan used the Roman Empire to butcher unknown numbers of early Christians. They were butchered by Nero, Diocletian, until you got to the time of Constantine, first 300 years. So the fourth beast is the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire would give his seat, which is his seat of government, to this composite beast. And it also says this beast has a wound, gets wounded in verse 3. I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound is healed. And then verse 5 says this beast was given a mouth speaking great things. Verse 7, this beast was given power to make war against the saints. And here's my point. I know these are kind of, these are details that if you're not familiar with, it's kind of, you're kind of thinking, well, where are you going with this? So here's where I'm going with this. In the 1500s, the Protestant Reformation rose up in Europe, spearheaded by Luther. And it grew, and it resulted in a mighty movement away from the Catholic Church. That's where Protestants protested against Rome. And as these Protestants studied prophecy, they came to an almost unanimous conclusion, and that was that the papal power, centered in the authority of popes, fit every detail of the beast. That it sits, where is its headquarters? In the city of Rome. Because it says the dragon, the Roman Empire, would give to him his seat of government. So it's sitting right there in Rome. He does have a mouth speaking great things, making all these claims for itself. And it also historically has made war on the saints. You think of the Inquisition, you think of the martyrs, Fox's Book of Martyrs. I mean, there's a whole history behind this. And so the point is that I can build my case that the first beast is the papal power. And in the time of the French Revolution, it was wounded because the French reacted against the bloodshed of Rome, and Napoleon sent a general named Berthier to the Vatican, and he basically put a flag for France and said, "You're done. The popes are done. The political power of the papacy is done." And that's what verse 10 is saying when it says, "He that leads into captivity," because the Roman Church led people into captivity, he will go into captivity. And he who kills with the sword, which is what the Roman Church did by uniting with state governments and enforcing its will upon the people of Europe and England, it was then killed with the sword, by the sword of Napoleon and his general. They knocked the papacy out of power during the time of the French Revolution. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. So then verse 11 says, "I beheld another beast coming up." So here's the point of all this, that when the second beast comes up, it comes up at the same time that the first beast is going down. And the first beast went down during the time of the French Revolution, which was happening in France and Europe, and which was in the late 1700s. And during that same time, when the papacy was going down, what was happening across the Atlantic? the United States was coming up. So one beast goes down, one beast comes up at the same time. So the timing also, and the genius of its two horns like a lamb, separating government from religion, the genius of the second beast is a reaction against the first beast. The papal power, by its very nature, under the authority of popes, is that the Pope believes that he has the right to enforce religion through the state upon the people of Europe. And that's why eventually people left England, they left Europe, they got on the Mayflower, they came across to America, they eventually established a constitution, and these two creatures are totally different from each other. America rose up in the context of the papal persecution and the rejection of religious freedom in Europe and in England. And so, and it came up at the same time the other beast went down. And so in answer to your questions, this doesn't fit Russia. It doesn't fit Russia, and especially like you mentioned, there's a lot of Catholicism, which is actually Russian Orthodox, which is very similar to the Catholic Church in many ways. They have, a lot of the same. They have the icons and as contrast to idols. There's a lot of traditions that are. And I've been to Russia 3 times. I've got friends that are Russian, and there's a lot of Catholicism through Eastern Orthodoxy within Russia. So it just doesn't fit all the details. The second beast, with no crowns on its horns, reveals that we have a new animal. We have a new nation that was really a reaction against the tyranny of Europe in the Dark Ages. And this ties in with your guest, your previous guest, Paul Miller. He seems to, maybe he doesn't understand the prophecy of Revelation 13:11, but he certainly understands the principles of the sphere of Caesar and the sphere of the things of God, which were developed in America as a reaction to the tyranny of the first beast, the papal power. And so, like I said, there's a lot of moving parts.
That's fascinating, man.
This topic, yeah. And so I know this was a lot. I just gave you a whole mouthful.
Drink it through a fire hose. No, I mean, but here's what I love about this, because, so basically when I went to seminary, when I went to some of these, I would go to, even in like Pentecostal seminaries, there'd be a lot of skepticism, right, about America having any place in the Bible or any modern country for that, except maybe Israel, but kind of more seeing it like, hey, Israel is, I don't need to get into all of that, but my point in that is that Israel, like maybe Israel could be seen because of that continuity historically. My question, there's a lot of questions I have, and unfortunately, we don't have enough time to get through all of them. So,
we may need a part 2. We may need a part 2.
Hey, I think that's true. So, I want to think about Trump for a minute, and I want to throw Trump out there because I don't want to assume, your theological like tradition. I mean, I know you grew up, you said basically secular Jewish, and but I don't want to assume like that you're Pentecostal in theology or any of that. Certainly, obviously, you can tell us what you are around those lines. But my thing about Trump is the amount of people that said they prophesied, that Trump was going to be elected, even to the point that they said he was elected, right? But the election was stolen, and he was elected. And some of these, and so for me, just cards on the table, I voted for Trump in 2016. I didn't in 2020 or 2024. I voted third party because there's a lot of reasons that I kind of shifted there. But I still I consider myself conservative. I consider myself theologically conservative, socially conservative, for sure. And yet I was very disturbed by the kind of rhetoric I would hear around this prophesying about Trump, and then he didn't win, but they would try to be like, oh, he did win, and the prophecy was real. And I'm not trying to, although you certainly can speak to any of that, whatever you want. My question about that's just giving context for the question, is where do you see someone like Trump being in this narrative? Is it like, is he the same as Obama, the same as the Bushes and the Clintons? Are they all the same? Or do you feel like Trump is some kind of, is there something particular and special about Trump when it comes to prophecy? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. You ask easy questions, don't you?
Hey, whatever you feel like you can answer. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to go public on anything you don't want to.
No, that's okay, man. That's a joke, tongue in cheek. I don't mind you asking me any question at all. I've thought a lot about this as well, and within the community of, the world is obviously divided on this. We know that America's divided on this, or at least largely a lot of division. Even within our own White Horse Media community, different people have different opinions about Trump. So it's not. So here's I'll give you my take. Trump is a very unusual person. As the Lord continues to work with me, I am less and less inclined to put people in a camp of where they're going to go when they haven't gone there yet. You know what I mean? So I don't know what Trump is going to do in the future. I see him as a very interesting, unusual blend. There are things that he stands for. There are things that some of his policies that I resonate with. I definitely do. There's other things that, his sort of cantankerous personality. Now, some people say that when you get to know him, he's not like that. But at least his public persona, he'll belittle people that don't agree with him, and I don't like that. I don't think that's a good trait of character. I'm a lot more. I believe that diplomacy and loving your neighbor as yourself and treating people with respect, even if you don't agree with them, to me that's the high road. And I think Donald Trump needs a lot of work in that area. So I don't see him as the devil in disguise. Neither do I see him as Saint Donald. I don't see either one of those things. There are things I like. There are things that I don't like. Now, there's certain things. Now there is something that concerns me, and that is that. As Paul Miller mentioned in your podcast previous, where he's really up on these church-state issues, he was concerned about some of the things that Donald Trump says when he meets with some members of the Christian community and says, "I'm going to give you power. I'm going to give power back to you." And if I look at the Dark Ages, that's part of the problems with the papacy, is that the church had power to control the state, to implement its will. Now, whether Donald Trump is going to go that way in the future, I can't say. I don't know if he's going to go there or not. But that does concern me. Now, there's some other things that I really like. He gave and this is kind of a separate subject, but it's to me it's important. He gave a speech in Nashville before he was elected at the cryptocurrency conference. Crypto conference, and he said that if he's elected, he's going to make America the crypto capital, the Bitcoin capital of the world. And from all the study that I've done about Bitcoin, Bitcoin is the people's freedom money. It's a way to transact business apart from the control of the central banks. Now, the central bank is threatened by that, and they would like to make their own version of cryptocurrency, which is the central bank digital currency. And if we go in that
I definitely agree with you about this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and if we go in that direction, that's a problem. So I like the fact that Trump is pro-Bitcoin. I like the fact that he's pro-innovation. I like the fact that he, in many ways, he is standing for freedom, apart from, the whole central bank control. So bottom line is there's things I like about what he's saying. There's things that concern me. I think his personality needs to improve. When I look at prophecy and it says that America will eventually speak as a dragon, I don't want to put Trump in the dragon camp, if he's not there yet. He may never be there. I think we should pray for our leaders. Paul says, pray for your leaders, kings, rulers, all that are in authority. We should be praying for them, and we should treat everybody fairly, including him. And I don't want to put him somewhere where he's not. We don't know where he's going to be. He wasn't, some people said, well, he's like the Nazis, he's like Hitler, but he didn't really reveal that during the first 4 years of his presidency. And so I don't know what he's going to do. I see good, I see bad. I see things that cause me concern. But ultimately, my focus is Jesus and the Bible and prophecy. And I do see that we're in a battle in America and in every heart between the Lamb and the dragon. Every soul is a battlefield between the Lamb and the dragon, including President Trump. Or, we're all a battlefield, and we all, at the end of the day, God's going to say, whose side are you on? Have you been on? Are you on the side of the dragon, which ultimately represents the devil? Or are you on the side of the Lamb, who is Jesus Christ? That's the bottom line.
Man, I really love that. We're coming down to the end of our time. So I would love to ask you this question. This is a question that I ask a lot of guests. And it's, what are you hopeful for moving into the future, given all the study you've done, the conclusions you've come to on prophecy? What are you hopeful for? And even contextualizing, what are you hopeful for with America? And what are you concerned about over the next, decade or longer? Again, I know none of us have a crystal ball. We have the Bible that gives us insight, into what we can expect and the things we might look for. But what are you hopeful for, and what are you concerned? And you can answer those in either order that you want.
Yeah, great question. I look at the macro picture and the micro picture. So the macro picture is ultimately what the sure word of prophecy tells us is going to happen. And from my study of Revelation 13:11, at some point in the future, America is going to speak like a dragon, freedom is going to be gone, the mark of the beast is going to be enforced, which you keep reading. It happens at the end of Revelation 13, when no man can buy or sell unless he goes along with the mark. So the big picture is that there's a crisis coming, force is going to be used, freedom's going to disappear, and Jesus is going to return to get us out of here, which gives us hope. For sure. So that's the big picture. Now, what's going to happen in the next few years on the micro level? It's kind of like, to me, the way I look at it is when Israel was taken captive from Jerusalem and Judea and taken to Babylon for 70 years, God said, settle down. You're going to be in Babylon for 70 years. Pray for the peace of your land. Pray for the ruler, for Nebuchadnezzar, and Daniel developed a very good relationship with Nebuchadnezzar. He was the king of Babylon, and Daniel and they got along very well when you read the book of Daniel. So as far as America, I think we should pray for the peace of America. I think we should pray that God will lead our rulers, that God will give them help them make good decisions, and that we will have as much peace and freedom down here for as long as we can, which is a window of time that we have to spread the gospel, to teach about Jesus, to help people that are lost, that are deceived, that are confused, that are, have no hope, to let them know that Jesus loves you. He has an eternal plan for your life. He died on the cross for your sins. He rose from the dead. He went to heaven. He's going to come back for you, and you can live forever with him in a land where there's no more sin, death, sorrow, or suffering, for all these things are gone. So that's really the ultimate hope that people need. So there's the macro picture. But the micro picture is what's going to happen in the next year, 2, 3, or 4. I don't know. I just hope that President Trump makes good decisions. I pray for him. I pray that the leaders in Washington, D.C. will make good decisions, and that we'll have as much of a window of peace. Hopefully less taxes in the future. Hopefully inflation will go down, or that we'll get some kind of a handle on our $36 trillion debt. And the banking system and all that,
Yeah.
So I hope there's going to be some kind of improvement in the days ahead, which I would welcome. But when I look at the big picture, man cannot solve the problems of this earth, no matter who's in the White House. No man can save this world and this nation. Only Jesus can. And Jesus, the only way he's going to do that, he's not going to fix it with a Band-Aid. He's going to return. He's going to destroy the devil. He's going to get rid of sin. He's going to make a new heaven and a new earth. And it's going to be just like the Garden of Eden. And that's the hope that I have.
Man, I love that, Steve. Thank you for sharing that. How can people get a hold of you, pick up your books, get involved, and understand more about your ministry?
Yeah, our main website is whitehorsemedia.com. We call ourselves White Horse Media because of Revelation 19:11, that Jesus returns on a white horse. So he's the rider of the horse. We believe he's coming, and we want people to know him. So we also have a YouTube channel. Just White Horse. Go to YouTube and type in White Horse Media. We have a Bible school, free Bible school, which is whitehorsemediabibleschool.com. We have, a lot of information. Some of our information is different from mainstream teaching, which is, even today, going into Revelation 13:11 is not what is commonly taught. So some of it is different from what is mainstream, but I just encourage people, check it out from the Bible. Look at the Bible, test it yourself. Don't take my word for it. Don't take anybody's word for things. Ultimately, look at what Jesus says. We have these three books that we're offering on these podcasts. We have the United States in Bible Prophecy, a little book, pocket book. We have End Time Delusions, which deals with more of the big battle over eschatology and end time issues. And then Approaching Armageddon, which is kind of like Prophecy 101, that deals with the signs of the times, pointing us to the coming of Jesus. We will offer, I think it's the first 10 callers who call our 800 number and say, hey, I saw Steve on Faithful Politics, and I want to get a free book, or even all 3 books. And we will give the first 10 callers, or maybe some more, some of these books for free. We have a toll-free number, which is 878-BIBLE, 878-BIBLE. Call, say, hey, I saw Steve with Will and Josh on Faithful Politics, and I'd like a free copy of one of these books, and we'll do that. So we're here to help. We're here to serve. Our ultimate goal is to bring people to Jesus and to teach the Bible. And of course, we always encourage people to, like the Bereans in Acts 17, test everything to see what's really right.
I love that. Steve, thank you so much
thank you
for being on the program today. We'll have to have you back. We do a sister podcast to this called Faith Roundtable. And maybe even that we could even spend a little bit more time digging into some of these things. Comes out on the same podcast channel and everything. So I think that would be awesome to do that. And really appreciate though you coming on, spending some time with us.
Yeah, hey, you're welcome, both of you. I've been blessed to get to know you just a little bit, and I hope for more in the days ahead.
Yes, same here. And to our listeners and viewers, thank you so much for coming and joining us today. This has been Steve Wohlberg. We're going to put links to the website, White Horse Media. And you said it, call if you want to get these books. I think that's an awesome opportunity, and check it out. And until next time, guys, keep your conversations not right or left, but up. Thanks, and God bless. Hey there, Josh Burtram here, faithful host of the Faithful Politics Podcast. I want to let you know about a compelling new spinoff, the Faith Roundtable, where I'll be interviewing top faith leaders, theologians, and scholars to unpack the pressing issues that are shaping the church in America today. We'll dive into topics like faith in public life, social justice, and how we can engage our communities more effectively. Make sure you don't miss any of our enlightening conversations by subscribing to it on our YouTube channel. Join me at the Faith Roundtable, where deep discussion meets thoughtful insight.